Hey, this is Brian with Key and Grizzly going through more Elementor Pro widgets. Today we're looking at the call to action widget. So what I've done here is pulled in an example of a typical sort of call to action, um, some text and a learn more button. You can see this pretty much being used anywhere on a website, but this is going to be usually your primary thing that you want someone to do on the website, right? So we want it to be obvious. We also want it to be easy to use. This is not the call to action widget. This is just sort of a mock-up of a typical call to action panel. And as you can see, this has been built using a section. I've got a heading, another heading, and then I've got a button, right? But you can't actually click on the whole thing. You can only click on the button, which is, I mean, it's fine. But this is kind of how call to action often are. So there's actually a widget though, which is pretty handy, and I keep finding more uses for it. I tend to forget about it. So let's drag the call to action widget out onto the page and see what we can do. So by default, it looks a bit like a blog post. It's got the ability for us to add an image. You can see there's these two skins, classic or cover. The difference is cover puts the image fully behind the call to action. Classic is more like a blog post. The text is down below. I could see this being used maybe in the context of a panel as like a smaller CTA with a little picture or something. Typically, I think they're oftentimes going to be sort of the cover setting like we have up above. But as you can see, we've got the elements here to build the panel that we had above in this one widget, which is pretty cool. So let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead, and just so you know, you can move under the classic view the image left to right. So if you don't want it to be as emphasized, you can do something like that, which is that's pretty nice. And we've got controls over the content. Do we want to add a graphic element or an icon or not? You can set the heading, text. You can choose if you're heading, what type of H tag your heading uses, which is good for your SEO and markup. What do you want the button to say? Where do you want the button to link? Do we want a ribbon? So there's a ribbon. So I kind of like that wide horizontal CTA. It's pretty nice. And then styling, right? We can go through, mess with the height, image width. Really nice. So it's a good widget. So I'm going to see, we'll go back through the rest of these, but let's see if we can build this top panel using the widget. So I'm going to go to cover because we want the image in the background. And I need to go to my section here. I'm going to just clear out these padding values. And then on the column too, I'm going to get rid of any padding. So I want this to be flush. Go back to the section. I also want it to be full width. So we're getting closer, right? So let's click back on our widget. What image would we like in the background? Somewhere is that gigantic glowing nose. Let me find it. Okay, found it. I'm going to insert it. There we go. We can control the size of the image. That's pulled in. Okay, so that's worth really noting. Okay, so in the above example, this image is a background image, right? So the problem with background images is, by default, WordPress is going to load in, I believe, the full size image in the background. So for your load times, this is pretty terrible, especially on like mobile devices, tablet. So if you have a bunch of background images, this can definitely create an issue where you're just loading in this really big image. Whereas if you go to this widget, we can actually choose, oops, I didn't click on the widget. We can choose what size image we want to use. So we can at least limit it to large, right? As opposed to full, because what if your client uploads, I don't know, like a 3 megabyte file? So this is a huge advantage to using this CTA widget when you can, because you can at least, specify this max size, which isn't perfect, but it definitely helps. Okay, content. So there's a heading, and then there's this text here. Since this one above uses a subtitle, they call it a subtitle. You can't reverse these, to my knowledge. So I would probably, for like markup purposes, I would tend to put my heading first, right? So let's say if this is really my H2, it's typically going to be bigger, but I guess it wouldn't have to be, right? So like if we, yeah, it's kind of tricky. Like if you wanted to thread in something that was a little more about keywording, like, I don't know, let's see here, premium, let me think. I don't know. I can't think of a good example. So I'm going to say premium party supplies, maybe if I'm trying to keyword stuff or something. And then maybe it would be like dance your face off or something. And so then we could have the whole learn more. So for now, I'll just link it to whatever. But here's a cool thing. Once you set up the link for the button, you can actually choose to apply the link to the whole box, not just the button, which I do every time. So those of us who have tried this before have had to do it with JavaScript. It's kind of a pain. This is cool. We can make the entire thing clickable, so your hit area is just so much better. Then if we go to style, let's see what we can do. We can set pixel height or vertical height. So I'm going to try to kind of match that. Just eyeball it for this purpose. You can align your text different ways. Set padding as needed. So what I'm doing, since I want to match the design above, since that was what I promised, I'm going to style the H2, even though it's in the search engine's eyes more important. I'm going to style it to look a little more subdued. Set maybe a slightly lower font size, space out the letters. I guess that one was some sort of a bold. And then I'll go to the description, which I've decided that I want this to be emphasized. I don't know what font they're using up there. It's better than this font. Let's see, what is it? Poppins. Go back to our widget. Got tons of fonts to choose from. Typefaces, not really sure which is the best convention there. Close enough. Okay, I'm going with 700. So we've got that. Now we want to go to our button. We can also adjust the colors, but the button color was, I'm just going to guesstimate, some kind of blue. It's not quite right though, because I've got the outlines right. That might actually be the text color. I believe it is. So we want it to be white. Go to button. And let's see if we can make it a bigger size. Looks like we can style all that stuff here. So we'll choose that sort of blue color. Max out our border radius to get the pill. We don't want a border, so I'm going to set the border width to 0. So look, there we have it. And now if I do or don't want this hover effect, I can mess with that. Go to hover effects. So if I want it to hover, I can set an animation. If I don't, I'll just go to none. Oh, that's on the content, the text, right? The background as well, none. So now it's static. Or I can do the zoom. I can set an overlay color. So that top one appears to be darkened down. So I'll just pick a darker color with some opacity. Get it in the ballpark. And then set a hover. So maybe on hover, I don't want it to darken down, so it'll actually brighten up. You can even use CSS filters. Pretty nice. You'll notice we didn't get the little divider. I could probably live without that. That's the type of thing for this call to action widget. That would be, I suppose, a limitation. You'd have to write that in with some CSS, like as a pseudo sort of after class or something. But as you can see, this allows us to build really nice call to action panels. We can adjust for tablet and mobile as needed. So that's pretty much it with the call to action widget. You've got some versatility for these sort of full width designs, or we could use them more in the blog sort of style or smaller style. Maybe not a full panel width, but you could actually put it, you know, let's see if you had say you had a 3-column design here, and I could drag that call to action. Actually, I could drag this one right inside here. So it doesn't have to go to the full screen. But by default, when we pull it in, I have the hardest time spotting that. It's going to look like this. So anyway, taking enough of your time. Hopefully that was useful. Please consider subscribing. We're going through all the pro widgets. We're going to do a full site build and video and just keep rolling out Elementor content. All right, thanks.